check in mine. Hi. Initially do get works. Okay, just give me a moment. Okay, I guess yeah. See, if you want to execute post, see, the get is the default method which is executed when you actually run it, but post should be triggered from another page. It is not working for me. Also, I will check on this. I think it will work when you request from JSP or other servlet. Okay. Okay, this is fine. You did not do anything wrong. It is just about the flow. I will check that and let you know.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other doubts?
No.
Okay, fine. Let me share my screen. So we have discussed about the life cycle of servlet, and we have three important methods in the life cycle. We have init, service, and destroy. But what is the purpose of init? Ashma, you can start the recording. Okay. So we have three important methods. Init, init, we have init, service, and destroy. We saw a few methods of service again. We also saw the code of service. Let me just show you that. Can you see my screen? Okay, let me just share my screen. This is what we internally have in the service method. So if we use, we have list of methods available inside service. Can you see this screen? Let me just take the screenshot. These are the methods available inside service method. You can see from screen how many methods we have inside service. List of methods, and let me just show you the code. Okay, so this is the code of the service method I showed you yesterday. It started from here, and just tell me where this code is defined. We are inheriting something, right? We are inheriting servlet. We are inheriting some servlet. That's where the code is defined. Okay. I have one question. Can I create a servlet by implementing servlet interface? Can I do that? Okay. Of course, you can do that because interfaces are there for implementing. You cannot create an object for interface, but you can actually implement it. So you can create a servlet by implementing servlet interface, or let me just write how many ways. We can create a servlet by implementing servlet interface or by extending generic servlet class. This is abstract class, okay? Or by extending HTTP servlet class. Again, this is abstract class. So which one I am doing? We can actually do this in 3 ways, but I am preferring the third one. What's the reason? We know that like it contains some extra features. HTTP servlet contains all the features of generic servlet and servlet interface again. So all the advanced methods which are defined, you will get access when you actually extend the HTTP servlet class. That's why we choose to extend HTTP servlet abstract class. Okay. Okay, so I'm just showing you the service method. Service method is a basic method of servlet lifecycle. So I told you, if you are making one request, your request will be handled by the service method. Service method, again, it will internally have some list of methods. So based on the method, based on the request type, the service method will hand over the request to the respective method. Okay. So all these methods are part of service method. You can either give service or you can directly give do get or do post or whatever you want. So we have 7 methods, but the most importantly used one are get and post. And what's it? I told you 2 differences between get and post. Did you remember it? What are the 2 differences of two important? There are so many differences, but importantly 2 differences. Can you tell me those? Anyone remember it or forgot it?
Get is used to fetch data, post is
Yeah,
used to post, but
yeah,
post is more secure than get.
yes, exactly. And you can also post the data using get, but limited data. It is mainly for fetching. Okay. See, with me, you are replying over the chat, but once you start classes with Nagendra, he don't check the chat window. You have to reply him directly. Okay. So see here how it is how the service method is handing over the request to the respective method. This is the internal code. It will check the method. If the method equals to get, then it calls to get. If it is equal to head, then it will call to head. So it is like that for all the methods. Do post, do put, do delete, do options, etc. Okay, and we have init method. Why we need destroy method? Just tell me one line about init. Already you told init is used for the initialization. What about the destroy? Just to remove your servlet from the memory, from the container. Container does that. So when you actually first make the request, your servlet will be loaded. But once you're done finishing your task, somebody has to unload the servlet. So the destroy method will be called. And okay, we understood about destroy and what initialization we want to make in the init method and why we need to initialize any servlet. What do you mean by that? Okay. Okay. What do you mean by initialization? Did you remember it? Yeah, initialization is nothing but giving some values. So when you are requesting, when you create any servlet and request for something, you can actually give some values to it. If you write those values in the init method is the first method to get executed in the servlet lifecycle. Okay, so if you define some parameters there, they are available to your servlet before you could make the first request itself. You want to define some properties which you want to make available to your servlet before you could make the first request itself. So each time when you make the request, the init parameters are available. There is one important point. Your init method will be executed only once during the initialization. Okay. As I told you already in the web application it is all about the request and response. And just tell me how many times we can make request and how many times we usually make requests.
Multiple.
It can be any number of times. You will design web application in such a way that you will have so many features in it. So everything is like making a request. So you can have any number of requests for it, and each time when you make a request, your service method gets called, and init method gets called only once during the initialization. Okay, and destroy method will be called when you stop the server or when you unload the server. Called only once during the initialization. Okay, and let me just keep it here. Okay, init method called only once during the initialization of the servlet. When the servlet will be initialized and who will initialize the servlet? Who will take the responsibility of initializing the servlet? It is the container, right? What about the service method? Called each time when you make a new request. What about the destroy? Called when the servlet gets destroyed or when the server is stopped. Destroyed or unloaded or when the server gets stopped. So this is the brief idea behind the different methods of servlet. And apart from these methods, loading the servlet or creating the object for the servlet will be taken care by the container. Okay, and we discussed already in it all about initialization. So the primary reason behind initializing servlet is that we want to make some properties available to your servlet throughout its life cycle. Each time when I make a request, my service method gets called and the code gets executed. So you can actually make use of the init parameters every time when you make the service request. We want to define some properties which are available to your particular servlet. And we also have two important things called config and context parameters. We can call it a servlet and servlet context parameter. These parameters we define inside the web.xml. So anyone has any idea on these parameters? What is a servlet config parameter and what is a servlet context parameter? Okay, we define, this is again providing some values to your servlet. We define these properties inside web.xml file. Okay, why we want to define it again? We want to provide some parameters. See, if you define some properties in the init, they are called initialization parameters. You want to make some initialization parameters available to your servlet. Okay, but the servlet config and servlet config parameters they are little different. They are defined in the web.xml file. So when this web.xml file gets called, and who calls it?
Tomcat.
Yeah, Tomcat calls it when you get the first request. So these parameters available depending upon the type. For example, if we take the servlet config, these are specially for the servlet, respective servlet. Okay. We will define it inside the servlet tag. And the second one is servlet context. These are for all the servlets inside that web application. And these are defined inside web app, not inside servlet. Okay, even if you don't understand it, that's fine. You will understand it slowly. So these are the properties. For example, let's say in my servlet, I'm writing some code related to the database connection. So when I first make the request of my servlet, I want to make the database connection available to my servlet during the initialization process. When I make first request, my servlet will be initialized first, then my request will be received, right? So my request will need a database connection. So what I do is the database connection, I will write those initialization parameters inside the init method. Okay, so it will be available to my servlet. It will be useful or not? Because this initialization is done in the init prod itself. You don't need to write anything in the service method again because it's something very important again. The servlet config and context parameters are little different. These parameters are also provide some values to your servlet. If you want to provide some values to your servlet, for example, I created a toy project, my toy project. Okay. And inside my toy project, I have hundreds of toys. I have hundreds of servlets. So inside my toy project, for example, let's say I have a building block toy. Okay. So for all the building blocks toys, I want to define some category. And this category is specially for the building block toy. So I will define that parameter inside the servlet config. Again, servlet context is for all the servlets inside web app. So if I want to define some property for the entire my type project, then I will define it using the servlet context. So that property, for example, the shop name or the shop code, that is common to all the toys. The toy can be any type. So those type of properties we define inside the servlet context, and both of these will be defined in web.xml file. So you got some idea or totally confused?
Confused.
Okay. Okay. Fine. We will also define something in the web.xml file that is called load on startup. Load on startup. See, everything we define inside the web.xml in the form of tags, right? So it looks like this. Oh, where it went? Okay, let me write it again. This looks like this. Okay. So this property we define inside the web.xml. So what is this load on startup? What is this element? Load on startup element. So my question, when your servlets get loaded, usually you forget about this load on startup, but when your servlet gets loaded, when your servlet gets loaded and who loads it? No idea? Yeah, in the first request, it gets loaded when the first request is made and it is loaded by the Tomcat. Okay. Okay. We don't want that, like we don't want to load the servlet when the first request is made. We want to load the server when the server gets started itself. At the end, Tomcat is the one who is loading the servlet and who is taking care of the life cycle of the server, right? So when you want to load the servlet, even before the first request is made, you can use this load on startup inside web.xml file. We define this inside the web.xml file. So if you give some value, if you give some positive integer, you can give either 0 or you can give 1, you can give 0, and this is the closing tag, right? And you have to mention it inside the servlet tag. Okay, you can give 0 or you can give 1. The order will be, for example, if you have 4 servlets, if you give 0, your servlet will be loaded when you start the Tomcat server. Okay, so when to decide when to give 0, when to give 1, and when to give 2. So all those numbers comes into picture if you have multiple servlets. For example, I have 4 servlets and I want 4 of them to be loaded by the Tomcat even before the first request is made. So I have to define the order. I have to define which one to load first and which one to load next. So I can give 0, 1, 2, 3, so on like that. And what happens when you give some negative integer? So this is the order. We define it inside the web.xml. And what happens when you give minus value or when you don't give anything at all? What happens in that situation? Any idea? Yeah, no, it won't load first. So this particular servlet gets loaded when the first request is made. Okay, so these are few things you need to remember because it's important. So this is just the opposite of what we discussed, the positive values. If you want to load it before the first request is made, then you mention the load on startup. What do you understand by this word? Load on startup. That means load this startup. See, load this servlet when you start the server. And if it is a positive integer, it will load that particular servlet. And if you have multiple servlet and if you mention the integer values, it will load it by the according to the order. And if you don't mention anything, it will be loaded when you make your first request, or if you mention some negative value, then it will be loaded when your first request is made. So this is again one more property from the web.xml file. We define so many things in the web.xml file. These are few of them. Okay. So let me just keep it like this. Okay, I am assuming that you are able to follow the class. Okay. Let me just create a dynamic web project. So this much we know. This also we know. And I want to generate the web.xml file. Yes, tell me.
We can see your screen.
Okay. Okay, can you see now?
Yes.
Okay, I am just creating a dynamic web project. Okay, just give it some time. Okay, so I just created one project and let me create a let me create a servlet. Okay, let me create servlet. Package is form.cubic. I want to create my toy servlet, which automatically extend HTTP servlet. Let me just click on next, and this is the URL mapping. I can give the short name. Let me just give toy. Instead of such big URL, let me just give toy. And we already discussed the importance of URL mappings. You can give it directly or you can give it in the web.xml. And I want to use do get and do post. Okay, I will later modify it. Okay, so let me just remove the unnecessary code. Let me remove this do post for now. See, if you can see this, when you call the do post, it internally calls do get again. If you see the default code, you know, whether you post, you think generally, whether you post or get. As I explained yesterday, if you type facebook.com, you are fetching some details from the browser, right? It displays you some page. But when you post something, for example, when you give the credentials to log into Facebook, or when you post something, comments, or when you write some review on any site, you will submit it, right? You will either submit, or when you give credentials, you will click on log on. Even after that, clicking that, your data will be posted. At the same time, some page will be rendered to you. You will get a page that thanks for providing the feedback, or thanks for adding the comments, or even if you log into Facebook, your login page will be displayed. That means even with post, again you are fetching something. You are posting data, plus after posting you are fetching something. Yes or no? Are you following? That's why your do get again internally calls do post. Even you get or post, at the end you have to fetch something. Okay, so just understand that simple logic. At this moment I am just removing it. Okay, I told you there are three important methods. Okay. Okay, let me write. What is the first method? First life cycle method?
Initialize.
Init, right? Public void init. And the parameters will be little different. And see, do we need to pass the parameters? Okay, let me just get one example. So like life cycle example. Let me just take it from Google. Mm, I don't have example here. This is the web.xml file. Yeah. Okay. See, here I have some reference code, and here I have. Okay. We have init method, and this is one example. Okay. So we can actually define some initialization parameters, right? So what I want to do here is, for this particular servlet, I want to provide some initialization parameter. I will first define one field. So the field has to be private or public.
Private.
Okay. It is good practice to make your data private, right? So let me just define private string, and for this particular servlet, I want to provide some toy name. Okay. Okay. Now I want to do the initialization in the init method. Okay. So just tell me some toy name. Toy name can be anything. Peppa toy. Okay. So this is just a toy name, and let me just see inside init method. Okay. And let me also define the destroy method. Public void destroy. Okay. I want to. Okay. I can close the connections, or this gets called when you are actually destroying the servlet. When you want to destroy the servlet, you can deallocate the resources which are allocated to your servlet. But at this moment, I don't have any database related or any file related things with me. So I'm just putting a normal sysout. Okay. I'm just writing a sysout for my reference. Okay. So this is the destroy method. Let me just show it from the Oracle docs point of view. Where are my Oracle docs? HTTP servlet, Oracle. Just refer these docs and you will get some idea. See, these are the list of methods it shows you. And let me open the destroy method. So can you see this? Public void destroy, and it's called by the servlet container to a servlet. It will be taken out of the service. Okay. And we have so many other methods available. See, you can see the init method. How many init methods we have? This is one init method or not? This is one init method and this is another init method. One with the parameter and one without parameter. So this just initializations, and this is the one with parameter. It will call the servlet config object. It will just create the servlet config object, and we haven't discussed about this config yet. We will discuss about that. Okay. First, let us just go through it. So this is the init method. It's throw servlet exception. So this is a convenience method which can be used. So there is no need to call the supernet. We don't need call. I mean, if you use this one, it will call the superinit again. Why we call multiple methods constructors? You remember it, right? We remember the constructor chaining. Just to give multiple values to your constructor. If we are using the constructors, we will call multiple one by one using super, because we want to provide the values to your servlet. Whatever the initialization parameters, we just want to provide them. Okay. So we just have the init method here and we define some properties. So when your servlet gets initialized, your toy name will be, Pepper toy will be given to your servlet, right? This happens only during the initialization process. Okay. So can I use this value inside this doGet method? Can I do that? Can I access this toy name here inside the doGet?
Sure.
Of course, I can do that. That's why I'm defining it here. I want to make some parameters available for my servlet. That's why I'm defining them inside the init. Okay. And I also want to explain you something called response dot set content type. Okay. So this particular field, this particular element informs your browser which type of content you are displaying on the page. When we talk in the web application point of view, everything is a request and response, right? So here I am informing my browser that the type of response I am displaying on the page is either text or HTML. We also have other content types available. Let me just show you that. Different content types of servlet. These are all the different content types. When you say response.set content type, you can set any one of them. See, we will give the MIME type. MIME type informs the MIME type is the type of your data which you are explaining, which you are displaying. So what I wrote here, what is the MIME type? What is the MIME type?
Text
Text or
HTML.
HTML. Okay. In the same way, you can give any one of them. You can see either text or XML, text or HTML, text plain, image, JPEG, audio, application, all the, we have so many different types of content types available. So this one we set inside the servlet. Okay. So even without setting, it was working, but we will use it generally. So is this clear? I think you can do that password. You give a try. Okay. These are all the existing available ones. And if you want to print something, which object we have to create? Which one you use for printing something on the browser? Not on the console, on the browser. Yeah. Let me just my printer. Okay. I'm just writing print writer because I want to write something on the browser and I can use any variable. I'm just writing PW. Okay. Okay. Now I want to print. See, what is the difference between print and println? What happens when you give print and what happens when you give println? There is a difference. Yeah, it is just the next line. If you give print and multiple statements, everything gets printed on the same line. But if you give ln, if you write each print statement, that particular line gets printed in the next line. Okay, whatever you give, the content inside this bracket will get printed in the new line. Okay, so here I want to print is inside my toy servlet and I want to print something here. I want to print the toy name. Okay, I'm just printing the toy name also. So if I run this, will it work? Okay, I want someone, please explain me what happens, what are the series of steps that take place when I run this particular servlet. Can somebody please explain me? So nobody?
First, the servlet is loaded and
Okay.
instance is created.
Mm.
Then the
Mm. Okay.
initializer process starts, and after that, the service method is called, and finally, the register.
Who is doing all these things?
That's Tomcat.
Yeah, Tomcat is doing, and when it is doing, when you actually make the first request, that means when you actually run it, when I say run on the server, that means this particular page I want to display it on the browser. Now I am the client who want to see this servlet on the browser. So that means I am requesting something from the server. Sorry, I am requesting something from the browser. The request goes to the Tomcat. Then all these steps comes into picture, right? This happens in internally. Okay. So shall I run it? Okay. Run on the server and always remember this Tomcat. Let me click finish. Let me just restart the server and let me see my console. Also observe the console, what's going on. See, can you see this one from the console? Can you see this one? Okay. So init method got called and see whatever initialization parameter you gave is available to your servlet. init method got called, and then the service method got called. Service is nothing but do get to handle your request, right? So this is how the life cycle of a servlet works, and this is how we make the initialization parameters available to your servlet. And when this destroy method gets called, can somebody tell me? We discussed it, right? So in which situation the destroy get methods called? Okay, so shall we stop the Tomcat and observe the browser? Okay, let me just stop it. I can't see any logs. Just a minute. Let me just remove my toy project from here. Okay. Let me just 1 minute. So we have to unload it, right? Okay. Let me create. Let me remove another projects also. Let me just remove all of them. Okay. Now I will just create another servlet. Let me try to run it again. Okay. When I run it again, it is getting loaded, and I got the output. I got the initialization parameter. Okay, now let me create another project. I want to show something. Dynamic web project and my university project. The name can be anything. My university project. I want to generate web.xml. Give it some time. Just give it some time. Okay, I have different consoles available. Now let me just remove it. We get this type of problems regularly here. The destroy method got called. Can you see this now? Can you see this? So when we remove it from the server, it gets unloaded and the destroy method got called, and it is showing that it's not able to find the toy project. That's why we got this exception. It was trying to load it again, but we removed it. Okay. It should work when we stop it also. We'll check that one. Okay. So usually the resource deallocation code we put inside the destroy just to release the resources which are associated with your project. Okay, so we discussed something about the init, and now you got some idea on the init and destroy and service methods, right? Okay, and one more important point is all these methods are public, that the access modifiers of all these methods are public, but these respective methods do get, do post, and do head, all these things, they are protected. Okay, this is public, all these are public. You remember the access modifiers, right? All these are public, and all these are protected. I'm just writing it here. All the internal methods are protected because these methods are called by the service internally, and they're available to that particular class and the subclass. So they are just protected. This is one important point. Just remember it. Okay. So this is how the servlet works, and this is about the load on startup property. You can mention this load and startup property inside the web.xml file. For example, let me just show you. Okay, and let me just give you the brief introduction about it. So this is the welcome files list. This is the default code of web.xml file looks like. And this XML version and all I explained already. It is for your container. This web.xml gives you properties to explain the type of file, which one it is using. So version and all you don't need to worry. And this is the display name. This is the display name of your project, and this is the welcome files list. So when I run this project, now I have this project. Where is my university project? Let me just open my university project. Inside my university project, how many servlets I have? Again, mute. Every day, Alan joins the link and he will not be on mute. Okay, fine. Now, inside my university project, how many servlets I have? How many servlets I have? I haven't written single servlet yet, right? Okay. So I don't have any servlets available. If I run it, did I get any default page? Now I just want to run it. Will I be able to run it? Just let me just run it. My system is stuck. Let's just wait. Okay, server is started, and let me just run it. Run on the server. See, when you are running the server, you will getting it in the, where is my server? See, you are getting it here because your project will be loaded. Still, I can run it. When I can run my project, but it's not displaying anything. Okay. Somebody saying we don't have servlet, so we can't see anything, but we can see. These are the welcome files list. If you have it defined, when you run your project without selecting any servlets or JSP, that particular code gets executed. So let me define this index.html page. So under which folder I have to define this file? You will need to define it under SRC or WebINF or where? Where I have to define it? You mean WebINF? Okay. Okay, let me just create a file here. It is of HTML type, right? So index.html, and I got my page here, index.html, and I want to give the title as, what is this missing node churches? Okay, I want to give the title as university. So when I execute my project, without selecting any servlet or JSP, when I simply execute my project, it should come to this file and it should display me, welcome to Texas A&M University. Some welcome message. I want to see some welcome message. Okay. So shall I refresh this one now? Refresh it. Let me run it again. Let me just run it. Just give it some time. The server did not find the current representation of the target resource. Why it is giving me this? It should display me index.html. Just a minute. It has some warning here. Invalid character. Okay, let me give it in the H1. I want to put it inside the heading. Okay. Why it is giving me this? Any idea? Where did we define the JSP? I think we have to define it inside the web content. Let me just paste it. Let me just cut it. Just a minute. First, just save this one. Just give it a moment, okay? Still it is stuck. Okay. Now, okay, let me just define it here. What was the file name? Index.html, right? Okay, it got removed from here. Let me put it back. I think by mistake it got removed from here. I don't know why it is stuck again and again. Just a minute. If your system is stuck, don't do anything. You have to give it some time. Okay. So let me just run it now and let me just keep this one. That happens when you're developing the web applications using Tomcat and all. It's very common to get the errors. Even if everything is correct from your code, sometimes it won't get executed. You just have to restart the server, close Eclipse, and open it. You have to do all those stuff. Okay, restart the server. See, can you see this now? Earlier it was not working. And if you observe, please observe. If you observe here, we are not calling any servlet or JSP. We are just calling your project. You want me to open this in the browser or this is fine? Please respond. Please. Okay. So what do you understand by this? So welcome file is something. In web.xml, we mention the welcome file list. So what happens when you want to run your project directly? It will render the welcome file first, and we have the list of welcome files defined. It will render one by one. We have list of welcome files, but we are defining only one. Okay, it will check one by one, and it found the index.html file, so it is displaying it as it is. So shall I delete this index.html file and shall I show you that again?
Yes, sure.
Okay, please observe carefully. Now I'm just deleting this index.xml file. Sorry, index.html file. I just deleted it. Okay, and I am just mentioning this in the web.xml. Shall I remove this one also? Okay, let me just remove this one also. I'm not mentioning any welcome file. Okay, so this is just a normal web.xml file. I removed the welcome files list, and let me close this one. Let's wait and let me just close this one. Then I will run my project. Okay, I'm just closing this one. I'm just closing this one. And this is my project. I'm just refreshing it because I made few changes. Now let me run this one. So one important point, when you run your project directly, when you run your project without selecting any servlet or JSP, it should take you to the default welcome file. But it will render the default file content only when you define it. So for now, for this my university project, I don't have any default welcome file. I did not mention in the web.xml or I did not created it. So it will give me, it won't fetch me any page. It will just gives that error page. So let's just wait for a minute. See, can you see this? So when I run my project, this is just my HTTP hypertext transfer protocol, and this is my local host port number, and this is my project name. I'm just running my project to see the home page, welcome page. I don't have anything defined, so it's fetching me 404. Instead of that, I will just mention the welcome file list here. Okay, welcome file list, and you can have any number of welcome files one by one. I have defined one. Now, when you define the index.html file, you should write it and you should have some content there. Okay. Okay, let me define index.html file, and it should not be inside webinf, it should be inside the web content. Please take care of that. Okay, it should be inside web content, not webinf. Okay, so what you want to display on the home page, welcome page? You want to display welcome or any message? Fine, but this is to university, right? So you have to write some message related to the university. Now let me run it, it will work. Otherwise, let me just refresh it. See, it's working. So welcome files list is for that. You got some idea, right?
Yes.
Okay. So let me write this point also. In web.xml, fetches the default welcome file when you run your project directly. When you run your servlet, you will get the respective code of the servlet. When you run your JSP, you will get the content related to the JSP. Okay. But when you run your project directly, you should get the home page or welcome page. So you have to define that welcome page here and just write the content inside the web content. That particular page will be fetched here. So this is about the welcome page list. And we also have to add the load on startup. We will do that. And there are so many things. We also have to discuss about the context and config parameters. So I told you initialization parameters we are defining inside the init method, right? But what about the servlet context and config parameters? Where we define it? Now, if I open this servlet, I define one field inside the, I define one field inside the servlet and I am initializing it inside the init method. So for accessing it, do we need any method or can I access it directly? I am accessing directly or I am defining any method?
Directly.
I'm accessing directly. But when you define the context or config parameters, you have to use certain methods because they are defined in the web.xml file. You have to use getInit parameter, get context parameters. All those comes into picture. So is it enough for today? Because I get very less response from you people. So what about others? Anyone has any doubts?
My web that XML file says still 404 error. I don't know why.
Can you repeat that? I don't understand.
The web.xml file that we just worked on,
Hmm.
I'm still getting error. When I run
Okay.
the index.html,
I
it's
will
working
check
fine.
that. Okay, I will check that. Ashma, can you please stop the recording? Let me check his. Yesterday the recording was little long, no? It was more than 1 hour. Okay, can you please share your screen? Okay. I cannot see any error. Can you go to index.html? Okay, can you run your project, toy project? It's working. What's your doubt? Oh, you are trying to run web.xml? I cannot hear you. Can you either speak or type something on the chat window?
Okay, okay.
I can hear now, like you are on mute. Tell me now.
Oh, okay. Uh, like we have to run the XML file or
No,
the whole
no, no.
project?
Project. See, XML file is for defining the properties. You don't run, I mean, it will not work even if you run, and you don't get anything if you run it. You have to run your project directly. You can see, right, toy project left side, right?
Yes.
Just right click on it, run it. Yeah, right click. Okay,
Okay.
so you have got the difference, right? Running servlet or JSP is different, running project is different. When you run your project, your welcome file gets displayed.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and now you have to do another thing. See, whatever I teach, you have to do something else at home. Now you add the few more welcome files after this and check what happens, which one gets executed. It
Got it.
will go one by one. You try that at home, okay?
On the web XML file, right?
Yes, yes. You have to add one more file, index.html, then run it.
Okay.
Or some other file, then run it, okay? Okay, everyone, see, Nagendra's current batch is not going to finish soon. I think it will take minimum 4 more weeks. So we have to travel 4 more weeks. I have to teach you 4 more weeks for advanced. Then you will be handed over to Nagendra. You know what happens with the last batch? I started teaching. They said they understand everything when I teach, but they are not able to do it because they were not practicing. So I had to repeat the sessions again and again, which is a time waste for you and me both. That's why I'm being little slow because I want you to understand the class. We don't need to repeat it if you understand it. Okay? So that's why I request everyone to please practice every day's class. So it makes your life and my life better. I can do something else every day instead of repeating. Okay? So fine. So is this enough for today?